Not that the average viewer of CBS Morning is gonna know that, probably. I mean, but nerds like us who follow the Fed, yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, she kind of disproved the point. Um, we'll watch another minute of her and then we'll move on.
United Auto Workers strike for just a second, because I've heard you say they have more leverage now than they did back in 2019. How is that possible?
Well, it's interesting because when you look at what's happened to the labor market amid the pandemic, things really blew out, right? So first we were worried about automakers surviving. Then there was a surge of people who wanted cars. And when you look back to the last contract in 2019, don't forget, they negotiated that contract when it was 2% inflation. Now, both the automakers and the union members know inflation, prices are up by 20% from 2019. So just to get them to like the fair level today, they've got to get a 20% increase. I also think that the union understands it's a tight labor market still. And it is important for these automakers to keep these people on the job because they've got to be competitive in the global market with electric vehicles.
And we're saying so many strikes.
Yep, I think she's kind of nailed that with the auto workers strike. And we'll move on to that. We'll move on to that here in a sec. But yeah, the auto workers have a lot of leverage because, and that's just everywhere, because it is a tight labor market coming out of the pandemic. The other problem you have is, and we talked about this with the pandemic a couple times, we had a lot of clients retire early because of the pandemic. I mean, I know I did. I'm sure you had a bunch of your people that were like, I'm done. I'm bailing. I'm not going to stay at work and risk dying. Right? I'm going to retire now and take my money and just walk and just live off less. Right? But a lot of people who would still be working a day are not, because they left. And so you had a huge exodus there. Then you had a lot of people staying at home because they got some money from the government, which was good. And what you saw is that money was spent and came back into the economy, which was a positive. And then they got out and realized, wait a minute, I've been working for peanuts, killing myself, and I'm not getting anywhere. Wages aren't going up. So people started saying, well, look, I survived 3 or 4 months in the pandemic, not doing anything, or 6 months or a year or whatever it was per person. And I was much happier living on less. So why am I killing myself for some company where I'm getting paid next to nothing? If I'm going to make next to nothing, that's fine, as long as I have more free time.
Right. People evaluated their priorities and realized their boss wasn't really high on their list.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shouldn't be.
Yep. You know what? But people tend to forget that. People tend to wrap their identities into what they do to earn a paycheck and, give priority and loyalty to their employer beyond that which actually makes sense for a balanced life, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think part of it is attitudes changed, especially a lot in the 80s and 90s about business and about work. I mean, it used to be like, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the idea was one person could work, usually the man, and that was more than enough to buy a house and 2 cars and, wife to stay at home and raise the kids. I mean, if you were a white man, sorry. But if you were a black guy, it was a different story. If you were Native American, it was a different story. But that sort of mentality, and I think a lot of people are nostalgic about that, especially conservatives. Why can't we get back to that? It's like, yeah, but we had to oppress a lot of other groups. Single women, minorities, right? But that's part of it. The other part of it was it used to be that you work to live kind of mentality. Now it's more of your job is your identity kind of thing. And I think that's become more part of the culture. And then I think a lot of the millennials and the younger generations are sitting there going, fuck that. It's not like my wages are going up. I mean, I might as well do something else. And so that's kind of, I think, what's being done here. But that's why you've got kind of a squeeze in the labor market, is that people want more. If I'm going to have to now put on pants and go to work, I want another 20%. I want another 40%. Make it worth my while. You know,
That is fair. I have come up with my pants number. Everybody's pants number is different, but I'm not putting pants on for less than blank,
yeah.
right?
It gets higher as you get older, kids. Be surprised how hard it is to put on pants as you get older. Anyway, so let's look at a little bit of the United Auto Workers strike. This is CBS Live. We got CBS a lot today for some reason.
Labor standoff between the UAW and Detroit's big three automakers is nearing a second week.
Yes, both sides are vowing to expand their actions if negotiators cannot work out a deal by Friday. Nearly 13,000 GM, Ford, and Stellantis workers are now on strike at 3 facilities. The union president says more workers will walk off the job tomorrow unless there is serious progress in the negotiations. Meanwhile, automakers say more layoffs are coming if the strike continues.
CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve joins us now from Michigan. Chris, it's good to see you. So the UAW has set a Friday deadline for a deal. What's going to happen tomorrow if another 12 to 15,000 auto workers walk off the job?
Well, we don't know how many auto workers will be called on to strike. It could be similar to what we saw a week ago. It could be much larger. Right now, they have called a strike at 3 plants. It's about 13,000 UAW workers on strike. The union could do the same thing again and pick 3 more plants. They could go much bigger. So we don't know. But what will happen is whatever plants are struck, the workers will walk off the job tomorrow, and those plants will cease producing whatever it is they make if they're an assembly.
So, yeah. So now it's become kind of a pissing contest, right? You strike, we're laying people off. Which I think is, I don't know the whole situation with the 3 big ones, but I would sit there and go, you start laying these people off when they're striking, 1, it looks horrible. The PR is terrible.
Oh, yeah. Happy to spin that.
Right. And 2, you're gonna eat it in lawsuits and unemployment checks. And for the people who don't know this, if you own a business and you fire your employee and you don't have
and your unemployment premiums,
right? Well, and then you don't have a good cause, and your employee says, "Hey, I think I was wrongfully fired, or they didn't give me a reason, or whatever it was," right? And they go to unemployment. Unemployment rules in their favor. It's not even a court. It's a separate unemployment rules. Guess who's paying their unemployment check? You are, the employer who fired them. So if you we're gonna lay off 13,000 people are striking. I can't remember how they laid off. It might have been about that same number, but it's like you lay off all those people. That's all unemployment you have to pay now. Not that unemployment's super expensive, but still, you're paying people to not work at this point. So the big thing with this is, so Bernie Sanders came out on this, and the Democrats, Biden's been real supportive of the union, which is kind of a big switch for him because he kind of left the train workers union, he basically kind of told them to suck it. But here's Bernie Sanders, and he's talking about it real quick, and we'll watch a little bit. I'm not going to watch the whole thing with him, but.
For joining me to discuss a very important and timely issue. In the United States today, at a time of unprecedented income and wealth inequality, weekly wages for the average American worker are actually lower than they were 50 years ago after adjusting for inflation. Quite unbelievable. And that means that despite a massive increase in worker productivity, despite CEOs now making nearly 400 times more than what their employees earn, despite record-breaking corporate profits, dividends, and stock buybacks, the average American worker in many respects is worse off economically today than he or she was 50 years ago. That morally grotesque and growing inequality is exactly what has been occurring in the automobile industry for decades. This time, however, under new union leadership, the members of the UAW are fighting back. If the big three automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, do not provide reasonable contracts to address long-standing inequities in the industry, there will be a strike. And all of us should support the strikers.
I agree with all that.
Yep.
I don't know what else to
Right
say
with
other
them.
than I agree with all that. Now,
Feeling burned on that one.
yeah. Now, it's become kind of a PR war, right? Where GM and Stellantis and Ford are trying to fight back and sit there and say, well, you know, we kind of have to. I mean, I think GM offered 20% raise. It's something else, but they didn't offer a ton on the table. But they're like, oh, but this was unprecedented. We offered them a ton, and they're like, no, you didn't. Right? Here's the counter argument. All right, and we're gonna do this. This was from Yahoo Finance, and the article, just so you guys can see that I'm not lying to you. What striking workers get wrong about automaker profits? And I'm just gonna read a little bit for you real quick. So General Motors spent $21 billion on stock buybacks during the last 12 years. A lot of money, $21 billion in stock buybacks, which basically inflates the price of their stock. It should give more money to assembly line workers instead. That's the logic of the United Auto Workers Union, which is staging an intensifying strike against GM, Ford, and Jeep parent Stellantis. So far, nearly 13,000 members are off. Now, the whole thing about this, as he gets down to it, is the Detroit Three, the big three companies, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, profitability compared to the best automakers in Japan and Europe, Toyota and Volkswagen, along with Tesla, which only makes electric vehicles, GM and Ford trailed the other four in total profits. If you measure it by percentage, if you measure it by total amount of money, they didn't. But if you measure it by percentage, and you got to remember, Tesla only started making money in 2020.
True.
Tesla was
profitable.
It was a non-profit for a long time. So they're comparing this out, and they're like, so Tesla. It was not profitable, non-profit. So
I'm sorry. You know what? That choice in words was really funny.
I know. Sorry, that was a slip of the tongue. So Tesla had a 15.4% margin on 2022. 9.4 for Stellantis. Jesus, that's still almost 10%. That's pretty good. 6.3 for GM and negative 1.3 for Ford. GM is he ignores this, but GM is now the second largest electric vehicle manufacturer in the world, behind Tesla. But they're saying they can't compete with Tesla. GM's got more plants, more people. It's a whole different entity. And they're going to compare profits, and I want to show you guys this. So this is the profit comparison chart they make in this argument. So automaker profits, BMW, Toyota, right? Over the last 10 years were really great profits. Mercedes, Hyundai, and then GM, Honda, whatever, Volkswagen, Ford, Stellantis, Nissan, and Tesla. What I want to point out to you is this. This is why I think this is such a shitty argument, right? BMW, okay? Where are they located? Berlin, Germany, right? Toyota's Japan. Mercedes, Germany, right? Hyundai, Japan. And then GM, Honda, and Volkswagen, all about the same. Ford, Stellantis, kind of hiding behind them. These are American companies, and these Volkswagen and Honda are like more economy cars, so they're not going to see a ton of growth. But if you're comparing those profits and saying, well, wait a second, that's the problem is they can't get investors to come in and invest. Well, that's a stupid argument. They're blue chip companies. They get investors by paying dividends, not by inflating their stock with stock buybacks. Nobody's running out and buying Coke because they think Coca-Cola is going to suddenly shoot up in price. the company's plateaued out. They're pretty much maxed. I mean, they're going to grow little bits at a time. But if you're looking for a growth investment,
they're not shooting up.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to invest in Nike for a long-term growth stock. I'm going to invest in Nike because I want to get dividends.
Right.
It's the same thing. So they're kind of, I mean, it's apples to oranges. So you can't sit there and go, okay, well, they have to do this. So Tesla's average margin is negative, but that's only because they only started making a profit in 2020. Let's see. What do you want to say? GM and Ford have been dismal performers, with GM down 15% during the last 10 years and Ford down 29%. I don't know where he's getting that from. Oh, their stock price. Sorry. Yeah. So that's, I mean, but part of that is just what the economies have done. And GM and Ford didn't really get into the electric vehicle game until recently. And that's where everything's moving. Right? And when was the last time GM and Ford had anything really new or interesting to talk about?
Oh, jeez, I can't even remember.
Yeah, they're just making the same shit over and over. So that sounds to me more like a leadership problem. So, like, when you read this, it sounds a little compelling. Well, maybe they're not getting the investors and they're not making it, and maybe the workers just have to take it, right? Because if it's all about, but it starts with that first big thing, which is the bullshit thing, which is, because this when I first read this, I'm like, there might be an argument here, and then when I thought about it for a few minutes and then came back, I was like, no, this is bullshit. Because the first thing is General Motors spent $21 billion in stock buybacks. It should give more money to assembly line workers. That's their UAW's argument, is what this is saying. No, their argument is the executives and the CEOs got 40% raises over the last 4 years, and we got nothing.
Oh boy.
So
it's hard to reconcile that.
Yeah, so we're gonna move in here real quick. Let's see if I can.
40%, no percent. I mean,
Oh no, absolutely. So here we go. So this is the Majority Report with Sam Cedar, and he's talking to, I think it's David Dayen, who's a journalist, and they're talking about this, and they're gonna watch a clip of. I forget her first name, Mary Barra, who's the CEO of GM.
The CEO of GM, Mary Barra, and this is the exchange. This was pretty impressive.
The union is asking for a 40% wage increase over 4 years. They're asking for that in part because they say CEOs like yourself, leading the big three, are making those kind of pay increases over the course of the last 4 years. You've seen a 34% pay increase in your salary. You make almost $30 million. Why should your workers not get the same type of pay increases that you're getting leading the company?
Well, if you look at compensation, my compensation, 92% of it is based on performance of the company. I think one of the strong aspects of the way our compensation for our representative employees is designed is not only are we putting a 20% increase on the table, we have profit sharing. So when the company does well, everyone does well. And for the last several years, that's resulted in record profit sharing for our representative employees. And I think you have to look at the whole compensation package, not only 20% increase in gross wage, but also the profit sharing aspect of it, world-class healthcare, and there's several other features. So we think we have a very competitive offer on the table, and that's why we want to get back there and get this done. But if you
Okay, so I'm going to tell you this. So this is where this is just that cracks me up, that answer. So, but it goes back to that argument where you can make the argument that, yeah, they kind of have to protect their cash finances so they can get more investors and reinvest. That's fine, but there's still, she's gotten a 40% raise over the last 4 years. She now makes almost $30 million. She makes 29, roughly, a little over 29. Now, her other argument is we do take care of our employees, and this is kind of the deal. And
she brings up the whole profit sharing thing.
Right, profit sharing, and she brings up this whole deal about what was it? Oh, this is what it was. So this Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and Business Insider all ran with this. She was saying it costs us $67 an hour per employee, but it only costs Tesla $45. Right? So we're already paying $20 more an hour for our employees than, say, Tesla. You have to be careful, though. She's saying it costs total $67 an hour per employee on average. That includes benefits and all that. She's also including her benefits and her pay into that figure. And all the executives who've gotten huge increases. And of course, at Tesla, the executives don't get a ton of money because executive contracts usually are based on performance, and Tesla hasn't performed. So of course that number's inflated downwardly. So here's the other thing. So I went and looked at Indeed.com, and here it is. On the left is General Motors salaries. On the right is Tesla's. Okay, so this is Tesla on the right, GM on the left. Software engineer at GM, $84,000. Tesla, $133,000. Senior software engineer at GM, $121,000. Tesla, $154,000. All right, let's go all the way down. If you go to what was it? Factory workers. Where did I have that? Design engineer, test engineer, blah, 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 blah. Oh, where did I have it? I'll find it here in a second. But yeah, I mean, so GM pays less than Tesla. Do you know by about how much? About 35%. So for GM employees to go, wait a minute, we want 40%. Here it was, comparing GM and owners. Okay. What was it? Let's see. Compared to industry average of $61,000 a year, Tesla pays an average of $108,000. So Tesla pays their employees 76% higher than the industry average.
Wow.
Do Tesla employees
So
make...
Tesla's not even profitable, and they're managing to pay 30-some% more to their employees than GM is. That's insane.
Right. Tesla's CEO Elon Musk has confirmed that Tesla's non-unionized employees actually get paid an hourly basis more than their unionized counterparts at GM Motors. So Tesla pays more. And they're non-union. And the other thing about it is Tesla employees, if you go look back at the Indeed thing, Tesla employees are not happy. They think Tesla sucks. There are a lot more complaints about Tesla than there are. Tesla employees have to work longer hours and all that shit. So, but that's my point is for her to sit there and go, well, it's $67 per employee, right? Well, it's like, yeah, but you're also including yourself into that.
Right. Which inflates it for sure.
And it's a little bit of a bullshit argument coming from somebody who, if you factor it out, she makes approximately $14,500 an hour. So 67, you kind of want to go, fuck you. I mean, $29 million a year. She makes roughly $14,000 an hour.
Wow.
So when Bernie's sitting there going, it's 400% more. Let's see. Let's say it is even 67. Yeah, it's like 215 times more than, it just kills me, man. I mean, let's see. GM starting pay. What is it? Come on, computer. Man, it's just a bullshit argument from her. Oh, here we go. GM hourly pay ranges starting $20 an hour for a production worker to $80 for a senior software engineer. So their average assembly line worker is getting paid nothing. Average assembly line worker, makes $43 an hour. 13.96 per hour for cashier. Yeah. So they make around $40 an hour. And that's if you've been there for a while. So, yep. This goes to show you. So this whole thing with the arguments about the stock buybacks, that's part of it, but it's not the bigger part of it. The bigger part of it is the CEOs are making a ton of money. All the executives are making a ton of money. And we get nothing. And we're paid less than guys at Tesla who are fucking not even making a profit.
I mean, that's insane. The company that's not making a profit is paying their employees more.
Right. Well, they're making a profit now, but I mean, it's still pretty pathetic. But yeah, let's see. And then I want to do this next page. This was also the majority report. This is Republicans.
The House is
Oh,
contemplating.
sorry. Our Republicans have got to blame the auto workers. We got to find a way to demonize them. So let's watch this real quick because this is just amazing to me.
Going after, in the wake of the Cemex case, where we see the import of the National Labor Relations Board appointed by Joe Biden, now with talk about taking the next step, considering the delay tactics and sitting down and forming a contract with a newly formed union as an unfair labor practice, one that could be punishable by an enforced contract. Let's flip to the other side of the ledger and get a sense of how supportive Nikki Haley, the anti-Trump, would be of unions. Here she is.
Now to news today. As you know, we're entering day 2 of this United Auto Workers strike. We understand, Ambassador, that Chrysler is the latest company to have offered a 21% pay raise for workers over those 4 years. That kind of mimics what Ford and GM had offered, but that was quickly turned down. What do you make of that and where this is going? If they're turning down a raise like that, what does that tell you?
Well, I think that's it tells you that when you have the most pro-union president and he touts that he is emboldening the unions, this is what you get. And I'll tell you who pays for it is the taxpayers. You know, here from what I understand, the union is asking for a 40% raise. The companies have come back with a 20% raise. I think any of the taxpayers would love to have a 20% raise and think that's great. But, the problem is we're all going to suffer from this. This is going to cause things to go up, and this is going to last a while. But
I love the fucking, but that's what it is. Those greedy auto workers making around $20 to $40 an hour. They are gonna tank the economy and ruin it for the rest of us. Just because they're so selfish. Why can't they just take one for the team and spend the rest of their lives making fucking peanuts?
Gee, or maybe some of those high-paid executives could take one for the team, lower their own pay, and spread it out around the employees a little bit.
Well, yeah.
Oh, we couldn't do something like that now.
I was gonna say.
I couldn't make less than $14,000 an hour.
Let's see. Well, let's say $40 an hour. We'll say that's about $80,000 a year. So we'll say the CEO takes $1 million pay cut. So she could, what was that? Hang on, 1 million, about 80,000. Just because I'm too lazy to do the math. That's 12 people that you could double their pay if you wanted to. If you just wanted to give them a 30 or 40% raise, right? That's still, that's what, 40 or 50 people? And all she has to do for her, it's 1/29th of her pay. She has to take a 3.4% pay cut.
And who's selfish?
I know, that's my fucking point. It's so stupid. And Nikki Haley, and this is such a stupid thing too, because like the guy, the argument from finance article, it's but see BMW and all these, like, you realize BMW doesn't have to pay healthcare for their employees in Germany. They pay healthcare for their manufacturing plants here, but they don't have to pay for any of that in Berlin. Toyota doesn't have to pay for healthcare. I mean, why don't, and now you got Nikki Haley. I'm kind of like, well, gee, Nikki Haley, if we had universal health care, if we had child tax credits and daycare and all that stuff, you'd save GM a shit ton of money on employee costs, wouldn't you?
True.
And they could afford to pay more.
Well, but we couldn't have something like that now.
No. But Nikki Haley, who also wants to cut your Social Security. Yep. We'll watch another minute of this, but yeah, it just blows my mind that this is all I mean, just remember, when you vote Republican, you're voting for your money to be taken out of your pocket.
When you have a president,
just to be clear, taxpayers.
Yep.
To be clear, it's not just the union that's asking for this raise. It's all the workers who are asking for this raise. And to be clear, when she says all these things are going to go up, that includes wages, both within the car industry and without. There is plenty of data that shows the implications of unionization within an industry, and just within the greater the union density regionally, it will also impact wages there, because you got an opportunity to get a high-paying union job. Other non-union outfits are going to have to compete for those same workers.
So when she says taxpayer,
so it comes back to kind of the whole theme, and we kind of skimmed it over a little bit, but it's like the Fed raising rates. Who does that hurt? It hurts the workers. Why are we doing that? Because they want more money, and so we're trying to make them more desperate. So we squeeze the workers, right? So they'll go back and work worse jobs for less money because they're desperate, right? Now you get Nikki Haley saying the exact same thing about they're destroying the economy, blah, blah, blah. They should just go back and take one for the team. This is literally the king going out and saying to the serfs, well, the reason you don't have food is because you're not producing enough, you're not working hard enough. Not because I've taken all of it and given it to the army. And I left you guys with nothing but rotten food. That's what started the French Revolution. The people were starving in Paris because they were in all these stupid wars. And so all the food went to the front, and the people in Paris were left with rotten shit. And they started protesting because they were hungry. And then they started killing rich people and taking their shit. That's part of what started the French Revolution. It's like, but that's what they're doing. That's exactly what see, you need to sit there and take the hit, Mr. $20 an hour, so that the $14,000 an hour CEO, right, who I'm sure donates a lot to a lobby and whatnot. I'm sure Nikki Haley gets kickbacks from all that, right? So that I can afford my next vacation or my yacht or my new house, or, why aren't the serfs surfing, man?
Good question.
Why isn't my maid cleaning my house? Well, you haven't paid her in 2 weeks. Well, she should do it just out of loyalty, because how am I supposed to function in a dirty house? No, you got to pay people. So
nobody's volunteering for that.
Yeah, fuck that.
Nobody's volunteering to do your damn laundry or your whatever other stuff. Yeah, nobody's volunteering.
Well, it's just a self-entitlement thing. That's the problem. It's the CEO kind of like, I don't know. I offered him 20%. I got 40, but I offered him 20. And you got to remember, my pay is based on performance, and the performance has been really good. Well, not because of anything you've done, but because we came out of the pandemic and demand spiked. I mean, just because you got lucky doesn't mean you're fucking talented or you merit $30 million a year.
Yeah, these things are not the same.
Yeah. Don't you love it how the most meritless people in the world are always the ones that tell you it's all based on merit? Yeah, that's because you just happen to be rich. You can't just believe that, oh no, I just happen to be rich because I got lucky or who my parents were. So anyway, we're going to move on to one last thing here for the news.